It's time to talk sports. It's Hacksaw's Headlines, a panorama of the world of sports, stories, comments, and opinions. Now, here's iconic sports talk show host Lee Hacksaw Hamilton and co-host John Riley.
Who wants to talk sports on a Thursday? We do. From the DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center studios in San Diego, we welcome you to Hacksaw's Headlines, our regular Thursday podcast as we kick off a great sports weekend. This is Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, along with my co-host, broadcasting from left field with his opinions, John Riley. We welcome you to All Things on a Thursday. We're going to do a lot of unique and really different things today, and we invite you to stay with us right at the end of the podcast. We have something special that we're going to pass on to you that I think you'll find really fascinating. Our podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center stores, 9 locations to serve you in San Diego. You've got projects for 2024, whether it's in the home, whether it's out on the patio, up by the pool, or in the office, think DIXIELINE Lumber. And by North County Eye Center, Poway and Escondido, we will all need help with our eyes somewhere down road, whether it's a vision test, new glasses, contact lenses, or if you got serious problems with your eyes, think North County Eye Center, Poway and Escondido. John, we're going a lot of different directions with this program now. Not able to do Fans Forum today because of what we're doing unique with a remote. We're going to recap the NFL draft, but tell everybody how Fans Forum works. Also describe to them how they can subscribe to get all the data that we're putting up on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, well, first of all, you need to subscribe to Hacksaw wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts. And they don't do Google Podcasts anymore, but all the other platforms, check it out. You can subscribe, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. Subscribe on YouTube and follow on all the social media platforms. And hey, by the way, if you want to get deeper into Hacksaw's Insiders Group, here's your chance to sign up. Go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com. In the orange box, fill that in, join the team, join the club. We'll send you some emails, a lot of great sports contact like Hacksaw's Best 15. That'll kick off your morning.
And if you like sports, check my website. I write on it every day. Check it first thing in the morning as we cover anything and everything, including the National Football League. As promised, our Hacksaw's Headlines podcast, time to recap the National Football League draft. And joining us, Jon Cooper, draft editor and analyst for Ourlads Draft Guide, based out of the Upper Midwest. And a reminder, if you like NFL football, this is a must-to-have in your library. It's Ourlads Draft Guide. Now, the draft is come and gone, but if you order through the website right now, you can get the draft book and the book that they're going to put out right before the opening of NFL training camps. It has volumes of information on all the players that are in the draft. It has, obviously, news and notes as it relates to free agency, players who are undrafted, and then at the back of Ourlads Draft Guide, they have the depth charts of every team in the National Football League. This is really a must for your library. Just go to Ourlads Guide, and then you can subscribe, get it in the mail. You'll get the book, and then you get the book they put out just before training camps open. And let's talk NFL draft. Now that we've been able to take a deep breath, pleasure to have with us Jon Cooper from the Upper Midwest to talk all things NFL. John, when we had you on right prior to the draft, we were inundated by all the rumors that were out there. And at the end of the day, at one point they thought there'd be 8 trades involving the top 15 picks. Did not happen. I was told it was a real steep price to pay for some of these people to trade up. And the teams that were trading out didn't want to drop as far back as they'd have to drop to allow some of those teams to trade up to get quarterbacks. Is that the read that you got as to why it didn't happen?
Yeah, they were asking a lot because some of those teams wanted quarterbacks, like the Bears, for example. They weren't going to trade out of that spot. And so, there was a lot given. Atlanta moved up, Atlanta took a quarterback, and a lot of speculation is that somebody was going to be able to get that pick. And that didn't happen because Atlanta evidently had in mind they were going to take quarterback. So there was a lot of factors involved, but a lot of offensive players went early in the draft. The first half of the draft was all offense, practically.
All right, John, let's go team by team. I'll just throw names at you. Just give me a brief response for all of the football fans out here on the West Coast. Everybody knew Chicago would probably take Caleb Williams. To me, there's a bigger picture thing here. Caleb Williams, as well as the other number 1 draft pick, Odunze, the wide receiver from Washington, they joined Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, 3 running backs, and a vastly improved offensive line. I think the big picture means an awful lot as to the future of Chicago Bears football. Response?
Oh yeah, I mean, being in the Chicagoland area, we know a lot about the Bears, and we see them every week on TV and whatnot. And this has been a problem for the Bears for a long time, having a quarterback. And so taking a quarterback made a lot of sense for them. They moved on from Justin Fields, a little bit of a surprise, but if you really look at it, he had 1 year left as a prove-it year, and they probably weren't going to take re-up that 5th year. So resetting the table, so to speak, with Caleb Williams, they don't have to pay him a lot of money for 4 years. He's on a rookie salary schedule, and they're going to be able to do some other things to build around Caleb Williams. And then if he is the guy, then he's going to get a huge contract in about 4 or 5 years.
On we go. Let's talk Washington. They've kind of cleaned the cupboard bare. Jaden Daniels, accomplished as a RPO quarterback, can throw, can run, pretty good leader. They did get Austin Eckler, the ex-Charger running back. But how hard is this going to be on Jaden Daniels? Because I don't think they inherited an awful lot of offense for that kid quarterback.
No, not really. It's something that they're going to have to address. I mean, they drafted a receiver in the 3rd round in McCaffrey, who's a nice player, but he doesn't have the cadre of receivers that he had at LSU. Those 2 kids were really, really good players. And Neighbors and Thomas. And so without those guys, it's going to be interesting, but he still is a creator. He can make plays on his own. He can do a lot of things, and they can build with that team. They did some things to improve their defense. They got a decent tight end in Sanat from Kansas. And so they are building with that football team. So it's not going to happen overnight, but I don't think they're going to be a bad team in the future. I think they're going to get better, and I think they had a good draft.
New England, they get the quarterback, and they haven't had a quarterback in a while, a time since Tom Brady left. They don't, to me, at least seem to have an awful lot of raw offensive skill talent around Drake May. So your reaction as to how good May is or can he be, and do you buy what I say about the deficiency at the skill positions in New England?
Well, they got Jalen Polk was a surprise too, pick, and taking him as high as they did. But he is a quality receiver, as is Javon Baker. So they're having to build around Drake May, and it's going to take some time with him too. He's got some technical issues, in our opinion, that create some inconsistency in his release. So he's going to have to get some good coaching in order for him to be a elite NFL quarterback. The tools are there: strong arm, he can move, he can create, he's an athlete. And so the potential is certainly there, but there's some issues that have to be worked on.
Arizona sat there at 4. A lot of trade offers, keep the pick, move the pick, stockpile more picks. They wound up staying where they were. And it's hard to argue that, Marvin Harrison's not the right guy there, but they could have had a lot of different right guys had they traded out. What's your spin on what the Cardinals finally decided?
Well, again, these are rumors, but we heard they were asking an awful lot for that pick. They really like Marvin Harrison. They see him as another Fitzgerald, somebody that's going to be an elite receiver for a long, long time. And I can't disagree with that. I'm not sure it would have taken a lot to get me to trade out of that pick because of Marvin Harrison. They got a really nice edge defender that can play the edge. He can move inside, and Darius Robinson with their other 1st-round pick, and a solid corner who can play nickel, who can do some things that they want in Max Melton. And Trey Benson, I probably would have taken another running back, but he's still a solid player, and he was worthy of a 3rd-round pick. So they did a decent job with their draft. They had a lot of picks, and they picked up a lot of players that can help them.
Chargers, Joe Alt. That was my choice all along. And then they go out and got a wide receiver, and then they went out and got a Michigan linebacker. They got holes a lot of places. They think they got people to step into those holes. Agree or disagree?
For sure. I think they had a real nice draft. They know what they're doing. Junior Colson is, was my favorite pick of theirs. He's a terrific linebacker. He may be the best every down linebacker in this draft, when all is said and done. I've watched him play a lot. He's an excellent football player. Alt, he's the kind of tackle that you can stick him out there at left tackle and you leave him there for 10 years and pay him. Obviously, you're going to have to do that. because we think he was the best tackle in this draft. So they did a very good job with their draft, in our opinion. Ladd McConkey is underrated receiver. We actually thought he could have gone in the first round. I mean, we may have been a little high on him, but the fact that he went at 34 tells us that was pretty solid pick and a pretty solid choice on our part.
How about Minnesota? They go out and get the quarterback, and they did not have to trade both of their number ones, and then they kept one of the number ones, and they got a pass rusher that they desperately needed. I thought Minnesota had a really good day.
Yeah, and the thing there is Dallas Turner is an edge rusher. He's one of the top edge rushers in this draft. We thought there were 4 really, really good ones, and again, they're different kinds of players. So they got their quarterback, and they also picked up a corner that is a little bit of a sleeper in Kyrie Jackson from Oregon. Not having picks until 108 after having 2 picks in the first round hurts in terms of the talent level they're actually getting players at. But we think Kyrie Jackson can be a solid player. Would have been nice to have more picks.
Were you surprised, as the world was surprised, at what Atlanta did that surprised its fans, taking Michael Penix at that slot and bypassing pass rushers when they desperately needed guys on the defensive edge?
Well, we were very surprised at that, and like everybody else, we thought we were scratching our heads. The only thing I'll say about that in their defense is there is a rationale for what they did. They have a quarterback that is 36 years old. He's had an Achilles injury, which, those kinds of things can be very tricky. And you also become susceptible to another Achilles injury on the other side when that happens. So at age 36, do you have a backup? Do you have somebody to take over? I look at the New York Jets, what happened to them with Aaron Rodgers. They were up a creek when that injury happened. And, they're hedging their bets, if you want to use that term, in getting a potential quarterback of the future, in Penix. The thing that I didn't like was the fact that they had to use that number 8 pick on basically a backup quarterback for 2 or 3 years or longer. But the gamble there is the quarterback they got, is Cousins going to actually finish the contract? You don't know at age 36. So it's not necessarily the dumbest thing in the world. It could be end up being a very smart move. There is a precedence. And Green Bay Packer fans, being here in the Midwest, were incredibly upset when Jordan Love was drafted with Aaron Rodgers under a big contract and about ready to sign another one. And that worked out pretty well for the Green Bay Packers. Again,
on we go. Next reach, Denver. Bo Nix. Now Sean Payton's got to develop 2 quarterbacks. He's got to fix Zach Wilson and fast forward the progress of Bo Nix. Were you surprised they took him where they took him?
Well, yeah, and a little bit, because I honestly thought Sean, is the type of guy that he really believes in his ability to develop quarterbacks. And I thought they might take a quarterback down the line. But evidently he decided, as did everybody else in the league, that after those first 6 quarterbacks, there really wasn't much. And Bo Nix got pushed up as a result of that. I thought somebody like Pratt would be a pick maybe later on, 3rd, 4th round or something to that effect. Somebody he could develop to go along with Wilson. But I won't bet against Sean Payton. He is an excellent developer of quarterbacks. I have personal experience watching him work as a coach, and I can tell you I'm not betting against him in terms of both of those quarterbacks becoming a solid player.
He knows the NFL. Jon Cooper, draft editor, analyst. Ourlads Draft Guide is with us as we do an NFL draft recap on Hacksaw's headlines. John, let's just jump around the roadmap. I'll just throw you some teams and an odd name or so. Carolina's just been devoid of talent, and now they go out and they get Jonathan Brooks and they get the wide receiver Xavier Legette. Are they putting enough good people around Bryce Young?
Well, it's going to take some time to know that. I think Bryce Young, obviously did not do what they had hoped he would do last year. And, Jonathan Brooks is coming off of an injury, and so you've got a receiver, Xavier Legette. You've got some experience. You've seen him. He's close to home. So you have a pretty good idea what you're getting. We thought that was a little high for him to go, but we think he's a solid player. Jonathan Brooks, when he plays, is going to be the best running back in this draft, in our opinion. But he's got a ways to go before he's going to get on the field. They took another guy, Jatavian Sanders from Texas, who at one time we thought was the second best tight end in this draft. So we're not sure, how that's going to work out. But they got a pretty good bargain at pick number 101, taking him. And they need to improve their defense. They picked up, we think, a really nice linebacker from Kentucky that we didn't grade quite as high as he went. But in retrospect, we probably should have graded him a little higher in terms of some of the information that came out later on. And so they upgraded their linebacker, Barrett from Michigan, the corner from Washington State, Smith Wade. So I don't think it was a bad draft, for them. And it's going to take time with the devoid of talent that they have. It's going to take some time for them to become a great football team. So taking a running back like Brooks, who could really be elite, makes sense.
On we go to the Raiders, and I guess I couch this under the umbrella of big picture. They're sticking with Gardner Minshew, the gunslinger, to be their starting quarterback. Now they give him a tight end. They've already signed Michael Gallup from the Cowboys, who prior to the knee injury was very productive. They got the young Charger receiver Guyton, who's a big yardage receiver, and then they went out and got a center, and they went out and got a tackle. I think in the big picture, the Raiders had a hell of a draft.
Oh, yeah. You've been picking on drafts I really like. I think they got, obviously the best tight end in the draft in Brock Bowers, but Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon we think, had first-round talent. Richardson we thought, a little bit of a reach, but we really like Tommy Eichenberg. We think they've upgraded their run defense by bringing him on. We thought he was the best run defender as an inside linebacker, as far as a tackle-to-tackle defender. And they got a nice running back in Dylan Lobb, who also is a solid receiver from New Hampshire. And the safety from Air Force, I really liked. I thought he might have gone just a little bit higher. So I think they had a really nice draft.
In terms of the Rams in Los Angeles, they went defensive end, they went defensive tackle, and then they got a third down running back in Blake Corum. That looks like win-win for them.
Yeah, Jared Verse we went back and forth on who we thought was the best edge defender in the draft, and he ended up, number one. But we had those guys bunched up, and they went pretty bunched up, as far as the top four guys. So, any one of those guys we think is a solid pick. Braden Fisk is a pass-rushing defensive tackle, quick off the ball. So they upgraded their pass rush. They're doing what a lot of teams want to do, is they want to have guys that can get to the quarterback, and having somebody like Fisk near the ball is going to help in that area. Blake Corum, we really like. He's not the best athlete of the running backs. He's not real big, but he finds creases. He knows how to gain yards after contact. Solid player. We liked him about as good as any running back in this draft. Cameron Kinchens did not have the kind of year that people were looking for out of him, and there were some holes in his game showed up. But if he plays up to his potential, he can be an excellent safety at pick 99. So they had a solid draft. They got some solid football players. They got a kicker in Joshua Carty. So, they had what we would consider a solid draft, meeting needs that they had. With Aaron Donald retiring, they really needed to upgrade that defensive line.
On we go. Pittsburgh. It's surely not sexy. It might be grit and grime. But what the Steelers did in the offensive front at multiple positions, what they got at linebacker, and they got a Michigan wide receiver. I think top to bottom, they got what they need, and they're all cut from the same cloth. They're all gritty football players.
Well, yeah, Fontenot and Frazier, excellent. Wilson, solid receiver. The thing that makes me a little nervous is if that's all they got, for receivers is, Wilson, who's more of a, slot receiver type guy, along with Pickens, who's kind of unhappy. That might be a little bit of a problem. The quarterback situation I'm a little nervous about with the two guys they've got, and Wilson and Fields. I just don't know. Peyton Wilson, jury's out. Is he going to be able to hold up? He lasted all the way to 98. We thought that's where he would be in the third round. He's a nice player if he's healthy, and if he can stay healthy and those injuries don't crop up that bothered him earlier in his career. If he can continue to do that, he has a chance to be a solid player, especially as a cover linebacker.
Historically, I don't question the Cowboys because they've always drafted really well. but they had specific needs, and that, notably at running back, I wasn't quite sure that Dallas did what Dallas needed to fill the holes. Now, granted, they did go get offensive linemen, and they do have a nice track record of developing guys. So how do you read what Jerry Jones and the boys did?
Well, Tyler Guyton was a guy that we went right where we thought he would go in terms of in that selection. At 29, we thought that would be a good spot for him, and the Cowboys took him. The edge rusher they got from Western Michigan is a high motor kid, Nealand, and Cooper Beebe. We think is one of the better guards of this draft. Some people really graded their draft low, and I hate to do that because. The way I look at it is, a draft is like wine. It takes time. You have to see how it ages before you know how good it's going to be. And those are 4 players at the top of that draft that we liked. Guyton, Nealand, Beebe, and Leofau, the linebacker from Notre Dame. He can rush the passer. He's good enough that he can stay on the field for 3 downs, in our opinion. And again, there's some people that might disagree with that, but we think he was one of the top 5 or 6 or 7, inside linebackers in this draft, and he's got some versatility to him as well.
Kansas City suddenly's got a red flag situation at wide receiver with all the things that have happened to their young wide receiver with the law. They went out and they got a fast guy, and you can't teach 4.21 in Xavier Worthy from Texas, but he's a 165-pound wide receiver. Do you think that's a negative, or do you think they build him into being an NFL player?
Well, there's been guys that have been small like that before. They've been quality receivers. He's not going to be real physical. He's not going to break tackles, but he's going to run away from people after the catch. And they've got a great quarterback. If he's open, you give him an inch, and that quarterback finds him, especially in a create situation. Worthy's going to make some plays. And he's going to run by people. He's going to take the top off the defense. And that's going to create opportunities for other people as well. So getting that speed, whether he's right now a solid receiver who's going to make a big difference or not, just the fact that he can run the way he can run is going to create problems for people.
John, final question, just an overview of these names. Harbaugh, impact on the Chargers. Peyton's got a monster salary cap problem and I think a roster problem. Antonio Pierce with a very conservative general manager and Tom Telesco. Just quick responses on what's going on with the Bolts, what's going on with the Broncos, what's going on with the Silver and Black.
Well, I think with all 3 of those teams, it's going to take some time. I don't think the Chargers are going to be in the Super Bowl next year, but they're going to build, and they're going to build it the right way with quality, high-character players, I believe. And so, I think, again, it'll take some time. Sean Payton's got a salary cap problem. He had to unload some guys that he didn't want to unload, I'm sure. But maybe he did. Maybe he wanted to start over again and build with, what he's got, the type of player he wants. And so the draft is a start. So it's going to take a little time for them. But he's a good coach. He's developed quality football players, and he's very good with quarterbacks. So, I'm not betting against him that team is not going to be solid. I think they'll be more competitive this year. And, down the line, you're going to see a very good football team.
And the Raiders' status with a very outspoken Antonio Pierce and a very conservative Tom Telesco?
Well, the Raiders, the funny thing is I like their quarterback situation. I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people think. I think they've got, Aiden O'Connell did a pretty nice job, I thought, last year when he got the opportunity to play. They still have to build around, that football team. They still got, some issues, salary cap issues may be coming too. So that's a team that I scratch my head a little about. I won't make any predictions on them. I want to just kind of wait and see how that all shakes down. But I do think their quarterback situation is not as bad as people think with, the 2 quarterbacks they've got. Somebody can emerge, and I think they can be solid at that position.
And a final comment, Kansas City. We all know about Mahomes, and we know about the creative juice that Andy Reid has. Nobody talks about Brett Veach. When they got to the Super Bowl, 9 of the defensive starters were their own draft picks. I mean, to me, it's spectacular player personnel evaluation. Your thought on the Kansas City leadership?
No, they've done a great job there. There's no question about it. And, They brought in players not only in the draft but in free agency. Some of the guys they brought in to help them, and they've also walked away from some guys when it was time to walk away. In terms of unloading it in trades, and I think that's helped them. They know they have their timing on what to do with personnel, similar to what New England used to do. And and I look at their draft. I think they got a really nice tackle the offensive tackle from BYU fits. They got a tight end for they're gonna need down the road. And Jaden Hicks is a safety that we think went lower than we thought he should have gone higher than that. So we think they had a good draft.
Listen, if you like football, this is a must to your reading library. It's Ourlads Draft Guide. You can go online, ourlads.com. You can order the draft guide, which has all the data of the players drafted, and then you can wait because you'll get, when training camps open in July, you'll get their updated version, which includes all the draft information, the free agents, the unsigned free agents, and then the depth charts of all the teams. If you like the NFL, you'll like this, ourladsdraftguide.com. You can place your order. Hey, John, this has been spectacular. I appreciate you doing this multiple times for us. We'll try to stay in touch. Thanks as always.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Jon Cooper, Ourlads Draft Guide. As we get to halftime, our podcast continues, brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center Stores, 9 locations in San Diego to serve you, as well as North County Eye Center, Poway, and Escondido. And we are back for the second half of Hacksaw's Headlines, our special Thursday podcast. We won't have the ability to do Fans Forum today, but we will get that back as part of our regular routine. But John, for everybody who watches us on live stream, just explain to them how Hacksaw's Insiders Group works and explain to them how they can subscribe and have access to all the things we put up on our YouTube channel.
Wow. I mean, there's a ton of stuff we got going on. So first of all, you should subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll get alerts when we post new videos, new vertical clips. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, any of the audio only platforms. Look for Lee Hacksaw Hamilton and go to Lee's website, hacksawhamilton.com. There you can sign up for Hacksaw's Insiders Group. And this is your chance to be part of the team, part of the club. And we send out best 15 minutes in sports, one man's opinion. Plus, we have some other things planned for the year.
And a reminder, if you like sports, check my website. Every morning, I write on it unique content that you won't find anywhere else. That's at leehacksawhamilton.com. John, we go from NFL football and the aftermath of the draft. It's time now to just kind of talk about topics on the table, for there are a ton of different things out there that we're going to cover here in the final segment of our podcast.
It's always a topic on the table when we're talking with you, Lee. Look at this, NFL teams in SoCal.
Yeah, this is a really interesting story. We know the teams that have practiced out here in preseason camp, and now we've added more teams to the equation. There are 2 more teams that are moving their training camps to Southern California. The Raiders are coming back. The Raiders have given up on Las Vegas in the summer because of the heat. It was impossible for them. The Raiders are moving their preseason camp to Costa Mesa. They are moving into the Chargers facility because the Chargers are exiting to go to a brand new facility in El Segundo. The New Orleans Saints, who've been plagued by really bad weather and old facilities, are renovating everything in Metairie, Louisiana. They're coming out here. They're going to the Rams' old training facility at UC Irvine. You've got the Chargers moving into El Segundo. The Rams' new facility is moving into Los Angeles, and the Cowboys, of course, are still in Oxnard. So there are going to be 5 different NFL teams in training camps within an hour of each other. And what that does is it allows you to have joint practices, a lot more joint practices. And because of the fact some of these teams are in the NFC, the others are in the AFC, and they don't play each other during the regular season, you're probably going to have multiples of joint practices on a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday for these teams. So this to me is kind of a fascinating story.
It's like Peoria, and all this, the camps there for spring training and baseball in the Phoenix metro. So that's interesting. I got to tell a story about this. I have something unique to share. So when I was a freshman at UC San Diego in 1982, the Chargers had their camp there, right there in La Jolla.
Oh, it was the best training camp in the world in terms of the elements and the weather. And then the new general manager, John Butler, promptly hauled him out of there and took him to Cal State Dominguez Hills, where all the oil wells are. And it was hot and it was humid and the players hated it. And instead of bonding, everybody was pissed. But go ahead with your story.
Okay, well, good. We have different eras here. But what was interesting is that when they were in camp at UCSD, they slept in the student dorms. And I was in Warren College, which was in the eastern part of the campus. And that's where the Chargers stayed. And when we moved into the dorms, in the September of 82, on the wall, there were still like handwritten plays that were diagrammed. That, it was pretty interesting. But yeah, they would work out right there by the Warren Fields on UCSD, and it was quite a thrill.
It was right on the ocean.
Yeah,
and that was in the era in which two-a-days were still allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that struck me, because you need recovery time. Camp is such a grind, and the physical toll, because you're trying to get into true game shape. Their ability to recover on the ocean in cool, breezy elements all the time is better than being in Houston, Texas, or New Orleans, Louisiana, or some of the other brutal hotspots around the country. And why the new general manager, John Butler, who came in after Bobby Beathard, says, we're leaving. We're going to go inland. We're going to have a tough camp, and we're going to bond together. And they moved to just a rat hole of a facility up at Cal State Dominguez Hills, and it was hot and it was humid, and there were oil derricks all around, and it was right next to the campus. Nobody liked it. It was such a negative. And then it really became drudgery, where you had the best training camp, I think, in all the NFL.
Wow, that was back in the day. But everything's different now. I remember the Niners would always train at Rockland, right outside of Sacramento, and it gets hotter than hell up there in the summer. So, I mean, do you see any other NFL teams doing this, kind of geographically clustering?
Well, not geographically clustering. The new thing that happened, I'd say about a decade ago, maybe 15 years ago, teams elected to stay at home. They elected to train at their facility. Kansas City Chiefs, instead of going to other places in Missouri or Illinois, they'd gone to Wisconsin for a while, just decided we're going to stay here. We have the facility here. The players can sleep in their own beds here. But the elements, the weather is really rugged. I went to Latrobe, Pennsylvania, where the Steelers have trained forever. And it's beautiful, but it's hot. And it is rugged. It is really, really hard. And the Dolphins train in Miami. You think that's warm, humid, hot, muggy? But more recently, all these teams have kind of clustered in their own facilities for their training camp. That way they're not taking the whole weight room with them to wherever they're going. So it's interesting how the structure of preseason camps has changed. So we go from that. Let's go to the next topic on the table.
So suspensions across the NFL. I mean, and CFL too.
Yeah. Rashee Rice is in more trouble. Kansas City Chief wide receiver. Already he's been indicted and charged with 8 different felonies from this terrible drag racing auto accident earlier in the offseason. Now he is under investigation, is probably going to be arrested for his part in a bar fight at 2:30 in the morning on Monday, in which a man got injured. He and his, quote, posse.
Right.
I don't understand what this kid is thinking. And his lawyer, his personal lawyer, said, well, all young people make mistakes. Well, 8 felonies in a hit and run auto accident, drag racing incident, that's way over the top in terms of making a mistake. And now he gets involved in a second issue. I don't know where this kid's head is. So he is headed for an NFL suspension for sure from Roger Goodell. The other one is a story. It's just a shocker. His name is Chad Kelly. He's the nephew of Jim Kelly, the legendary Buffalo Bills quarterback. Chad Kelly was the MVP in the Canadian League with the Toronto Argonauts last season, led them to a 16-2 record. He has just been suspended for virtually the entire CFL season on a sexual harassment bully-ish incident with a female trainer of the Toronto Argonauts of the CFL. And it was more than a one-time occurrence. Evidently, there was something going on in that Argonauts locker room all through that 16-2 season that he had, in which he just had this thing to deride this woman. And she filed a suit, a sexual harassment suit. And Canadian Football League has just suspended him for the first 9 games of the season. He must go through counseling. He's lost his salary, and he has to reapply for reinstatement. And this guy had trouble when he was in the NFL. He was in Indianapolis. There were off-field issues. And he was at Ole Miss. He was involved in a bunch of junk, too. And this guy was the MVP of the Canadian Football League. You know, his whole goal is to get back to the NFL. I don't think so.
Well, these are, repeat offenders. There's something wrong in their head.
Yes.
They need therapy. They need help to kind of work through these issues, because a lot of times when an athlete is verbally attacking a reporter, it's really more of it's projection. It's a reflection of how they feel about themselves. So I think this guy's got some skeletons in the closet, some cobwebs back in there.
Big trouble in the CFL. I mean, this guy came out of nowhere and became a star. 16-2 in the MVP, and he gets suspended for virtually the entire 2024 season.
Wow.
So we go from NFL. Next topic.
Okay, NBA playoffs are going on. Lots of headlines across basketball.
Oh, there's all kinds of things to talk about. We'll just start with what's happened in the playoffs. The Minnesota Timberwolves go into Denver, and they destroy the Nuggets. 2 games in a row. Ran them off the floor. Just an absolutely stunning development. And they're doing it with Anthony Edwards, who suddenly has superstar glow all around him. We knew about Karl Anthony Towns. Rudy Gobert has gotten there by virtue of trades, and suddenly he's become the Defensive Player of the Year. And suddenly the Timberwolves are the real deal and maybe a threat to go to the NBA Finals. And in terms of Denver, I do not understand at all what's happened there. It's like Mike Malone has lost control of the team. The team I've thought has always been careless with the basketball. Now it's coming back to haunt them. The team has always relied on Jokic. He can't do it by himself. Jamal Murray has become very streaky. He had a 2-for-18 shooting game. Michael Porter runs hot, runs cold. Suddenly the guards can't buy baskets. Hey, Denver, return the trophy. I mean, they're down 2-0, and now they got to go to Minnesota. So that's amazing. Boston Celtics, I projected, were going to run Cleveland out of the playoffs. They beat them badly in the first game, despite the heroics of Donovan Mitchell. Boston, everybody wants to have a big 3. Well, we knew about Tatum and Brown. The third wheel is Derek White. He has just exploded as a go-to guy to score a lot of points. And Boston's very deep in the bench with veteran guys. Suddenly, Boston looks like they are really, really unbeatable. And then the fourth team out there is Oklahoma City. And nobody's paying very much attention to them. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a superstar. And now they've got other guys who have really stepped up and are making things happen. A young forward by the name of Jalen Williams. Chet Holmgren is the second-year center, is like averaging 13-8. Just a shade below what Wembanyama averaged in San Antonio. And Giddey, guard off the bench, is like instant points. Somebody ought to pay attention to what Oklahoma City is going to become. So those are 4 teams to keep an eye in the playoffs. The other story, we mentioned Jamal Murray. He was just fined $100,000 by the NBA for a temper tantrum in this last playoff game. And just to set the stage, NBA officials have really had a hard time officiating games. There have been a lot of whack and hack and really kind of violent plays where guys are getting plastered and they're swallowing their whistles. And I don't understand that. Murray went haywire after missed calls. He is sitting on the bench while the game is going on after a butcher call that was not called down on his baseline. He got up and he threw 2 heat warming packets onto the floor where the guys were still playing. Guys are jumping, guys are driving to the basket, and he throws his stuff. And at first, the refs didn't know where it came from. They thought, well, somebody might have been wearing a pad or something, and it came loose. And then finally the clock stopped, and they went to replay, and they showed Murray heaving these two pads on the floor on the baseline where all the guys are running and jumping. He just got fined $100,000. You talk about immaturity and irresponsibility. Could have hurt his own teammates.
Yeah.
That's an issue. And we're still waiting. Please explain to me why nothing's happened to Pat Beverley. Granted, Milwaukee's out of the playoffs, but there's just mounting criticism of Adam Silver. The whole world has seen what Pat Beverley did with the fans at the end of the Milwaukee's final game with Indiana, throwing balls that hit two different fans in the face in the stands. And then we saw the confrontation where he tried to bully and intimidate a female reporter from ESPN. And he has yet to be disciplined. That, to me, is probably worth a six-figure fine, too. So, John, you got teams to talk about, and you want to talk about players? Go ahead.
Well, I think the Jamal Murray thing, clearly they're frustrated. They're not playing well. And, yeah, maybe the refs are screwing them over. But, yeah, you can't be throwing stuff on the field or on the court. But you know what this series reminds me of? Denver against Minnesota is the movie Rocky III. You know, it's like when Rocky Balboa won the championship, and here's this upstart, Mr. T, coming in, and just Mr. T just socks him in the nose and knocks out Rocky. So I think that's what we're seeing here. Minnesota is energized, they're hungry, and they're attacking this like wolves.
And they're going home up 2-0 against the champion. Please bring the trophy and return it right now, would you?
Yeah. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Absolutely amazing. Okay, so we've covered football. We've covered basketball. Let's go to baseball.
Baseball, the Padres. Now, they're in Chicago right now. I mean, but how are they doing here, Lee?
Well, let's just talk about where they are right now. They come home and they get the Dodgers. And, boy, the Dodgers are running up some unbelievable statistics right now. That's the weekend series. For the trade they made, I think most everybody's very positive about the arrival of Luis Arraez. I will tell you this. If the Dodgers come in and sweep the Padres, the lead is going to be 9.5. 9.5 in May. I don't know how you overcome that. But that's how well the Dodgers are. That's how much ground the Padres have to make up. One of my concerns is there's not a heck of a lot in the farm system. I went back and did an evaluation. Let me just read these statistics that I pulled off here. First of all, the Padres got a bullpen problem right now. Now, granted, outside of the unbelievable dominant starts of Dylan Cease, Padres have had to go to the bullpen a lot. In the last 12 games, the Padres bullpen has a 4.76 ERA. Ouch. In 45 innings, their relievers have walked 17 and have given up 8 home runs. That's an awful lot. The issue is overuse, and that's the thing I'd really be concerned with. They keep going back to the pen, and, I'll give you a prime example. Yuki Matsui pitched really well, but I don't know that he can throw back-to-back days, and suddenly his control has gone away from him. And, we got pitchers coming out of the bullpen. Wandy Perez, a little bit of Wandy Peralta, a little bit of overuse there. Suddenly his location isn't what it was. De Los Santos, who came from Cleveland, it's given up home run balls. So they got some issues right now in terms of how they can structure the guys coming out of the bullpen in certain roles and try not to overuse him. And that's the alarming thing to me. When your composite bullpen, which includes Suarez, who's getting everybody out, when your composite bullpen's got a 4.76 ERA, that's not good.
No, it's not. And it's interesting now because starters go a lot less time. They only go 5-6 innings. It makes me think about like back in the 70s, how the bullpens worked then, because you didn't have these 1 inning or loogie, kind of specialists. But sometimes you do the math in your head. You have 5 starters, the guys on the bench, the hitters. You really have very few relievers.
Well, there's 8. Everybody carries 13 now.
Yeah.
13 pitchers.
But still 8. If they all have their quote unquote role, each game is different. And so when the game unfolds differently, then you got to manage that bullpen on the fly.
Yeah. And the other factor is if you go to a bullpen day, that use a lot of arms. What do you do the day after a bullpen day or the second day after if you have problems? So that's a big issue. I went back and did a look-see. Tom Cosgrove, who came out of the minor leagues a year ago and had a brilliant season for a journeyman, he had an ERA of over 10 when they sent him to El Paso last week. He can't get anybody out at AAA. His first outing, no innings, home run, 3 hits, 4 runs scored, 4 batters faced. They yanked him. All of a sudden, Cosgrove has got issues. In terms of their other players at AAA, they have one young reliever, but he's not ready. His name is Luke Bakar, 1.62 ERA. He might be the next one they'll call if we get to midseason. Alec Jacob, who pitched pretty well in cameo appearances the second half of last season, 6.92. Kevin Kopp's draft pick, 4.11, but's given up home run balls down there. And Luis Patino, who they brought back, they had traded him to Tampa. He's had elbow surgery. He's going to be gone for 14 to 15 months. So they don't really have anything at El Paso. That team is sub 500 right now. They have one shortstop, Mason McCoy, is hitting 222, and that was supposed to be one of their bats. San Antonio, they're sub 500. Now, they got some players. Rob Snelling, who's probably the best pitcher in the organization, closest to being a major leaguer. He's got a 3.68 ERA in 5 starts. Adam Mazur has hardly gotten any look-see in spring training. He's got a 2.39 ERA in AA, which is pretty impressive. Reggie Lawson, who was a high draft pick, expected a lot, has not recovered from arm surgery, 7.84 ERA. So that's a AA. Further down, name you'll recognize, Ethan Salas. A little bit overwhelmed. He's hitting a 195 at Class A in Fort Wayne. He's got 29 strikeouts and 84 at-bats. That's like 2 Ks for almost every 3 at-bats.
Yeah.
That's not good. And the teenage sensation, Leonardo DeFries, is at Lake Elsinore. They sat him. He's hitting 148. He's got 10 strikeouts and 27 at-bats. So the younger kids, they like to push their development, are kind of getting overwhelmed by pitching at Class A and obviously in the California Rookie League. So there's not, outside of Rob Snelling, there's not a lot there they can call up if they get themselves in more issues.
It's interesting how the development works. I mean, it's a psychological thing for these players. I mean, because you take a step up, it's more competitive, it's more difficult, and it's part of the learning process. I want to talk about Cosgrove for a minute. When he showed up last year, I was like, who is this guy? He's pretty good. And he had that sidearm lefty. He was like the Shohei Ohtani killer.
Yeah.
He was cool. But, you know, there were a few games last year when he was coming off the mound, when he got pulled and he was not having a good day. You could see that mentally he was really rough on himself, you know, and he was kind of yelling at himself in a way. And I think there was even one clip, I remember seeing him in the dugout kind of punching himself because he was so upset. So my hunch is he's got some issues that he's got to sort out.
He's got some issues in terms of pitch location, release point, and obviously attitude. I mean, I was stunned that he got knocked around as much as he did in spring training and at the start of the season. And then to find out that he couldn't get anybody out and they had to drag him off the mound at AAA El Paso. So there's a lot of work to be done. Now we go from the Padres to the Dodgers. Let me just bring this up.
Okay.
Are you holding on?
I am. I'm hanging on tight.
We look at the out-of-town scoreboard and say, not again. The Dodgers, heading into this Thursday, have won 13 of 15. Dodgers have outscored the opposition 97-30 in the last 15 games. The Dodgers have hit 27 home runs in those last 15 games. Dodgers have a team batting average of 290 in those last 15 games. They have 34 doubles. They have 72 walks in those last 15 games. And by the way, pitching staff, 1.79 ERA in the last 15 games.
Wow.
I mean, they are rocking and rolling. And the Dodgers will be here for an unbelievable great sports weekend. I don't know. I mean, if we get to Monday, John, and they're 9.5 out, I don't know how you make that up. So this is a huge weekend for the Padres to try to claw their way back into this.
Yeah, for sure. But that's an amazing ERA, you know, that you were just sharing.
1.76 with 11 pitchers on the DL.
Yeah, exactly. But like we talked about before, the cavalry is coming. Yeah. So they're going to have just an overwhelming of riches. They might have to send some really good pitchers down to AAA.
Well, if you're out of options, you can't send them. Now, what's happened is there's some injuries that have flared. They get Walker Buehler back, and he throws 97 in his first start in 23 months coming off the surgery. The next day, they lose Joe Kelly. He strains his elbow. He's on the DL. So the Dodgers, there is risk. You're going to get guys that are going to get dinged along the way. But what they're doing with their bats all of a sudden, what they're doing with their arms, that's pretty impressive. So we got Dodgers, Padres on the weekend. Next topic.
Okay, I guess we're going NHL here, Lee. Oilers, Canucks. This is a great series.
Oh, on we go to the second round of the NHL playoffs. They've already started in some of these matchups. This one is going to be a doozy. This is the Edmonton Oilers. This is the Vancouver Canucks. I think Edmonton is a Stanley Cup team finally. You talk about fireworks. You talk about firepower. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Harry Kane, Corey Perry. Unbelievable. And how about this set of stats? Because I always like to look beyond the scores. Edmonton, 9 power play goals against the LA Kings. 9, I think it was 9 for 15. That's unbelievable. It's tough to score goals in the playoffs. They scored 9 power play goals with the man advantage. And penalty kill, their penalty kill was 12 for 12. LA Kings never scored a power play goal. So that's what Edmonton's all about. I'll tell you, Vancouver's a unique team. Rick Tocchet has done such a job. He's got a few goal scorers. He's got a bunch of grinders on the third and fourth line that seem to change the chemistry of the game. I'm going to be fascinated to see if the Euros, Elias Pettersson and Lindholm break out, because those guys have done nothing in the postseason, and those are their speed skaters who should be able to pot goals. Brock Besser did score 40 goals on the season. Veteran JT Miller makes them things happen, but they're going to have to hit, and they do play physical. They're going to have to hit to slow the Oilers down, because if it becomes a skating game, I think Vancouver's cooked. And the other thing is, can Vancouver survive with their third-string goaltender? Artis Silovs has really played well in goal after the injury to Thatcher Demko and the injury to the backup Casey DeSmith. But, can he hold up against everything that Edmonton's sending at him? Edmonton is just unbelievable. So that's what's going on in the West. That to me is the marquee series. We could have Edmonton and Colorado in the Western Conference Finals. Colorado's playing Dallas right now. In the East, there's a collision course. I think Boston and the New York Rangers are going to wind up playing each other in the Eastern Conference Finals. And both those teams have got a lot of snipers and a lot of goal scorers. But this Edmonton-Vancouver series is really worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, all these series are great. I mean, you were calling it must-see TV, and it is. Yeah. Now, granted, you're a long-time pro when it comes to hockey and your background as an announcer, and I'm kind of a rookie with this sport, admittedly.
Well, you like to drink beer, have sub sandwiches and watch hockey.
But it's fun. I mean, I'm really enjoying it, especially this playoff session. The thing that, this is a rookie comment, but the thing that blows me away is there's such little space to get that puck in the goal. Yeah. With all the chaos that's going on in front of the goal, it seems like the only way you can get a goal is if there is a deflection, some kind of a misdirection, because it's just too much traffic.
It's awful tough to get open seams. What you got is you just keep firing pucks on net. You get bodies in front of the net. You screen the goaltender, and suddenly the puck's by him. But it takes pinpoint shooting to make some of these plays happen. But yeah, the NHL playoffs, it's the rink is 200 by 85. There's just no space. Right. You don't see a lot of guys coming down the wing and cranking up a shot and beating a goaltender on a 98-mile-an-hour blast. I mean, now it's guys cutting through the crease, guys in front of the goaltender, tangled with the defenseman in front of the goaltender. The screens are unbelievable. How these goaltenders see the puck with everything going on around them.
Plus, they're wearing the mask, so that's blocking their view. But, some of these games have gone to overtime. I mean, so what's the strategy, not the strategy, but the rules of OT? Because it's like a sudden death, right?
Yes.
So it's a 20-minute period?
If it goes 20, last night's Carolina-New York Ranger game went to a second overtime.
Now, just hypothetically, if it was still tied after 2 overtimes, do they ever go to a shootout?
No.
So they'll just keep playing 20-minute OTs?
Yeah, there have been 4 OT games. When I was in World Hockey Association, I did a triple overtime playoff game between the Indianapolis Racers and the Cincinnati Stingers. I was doing TV for the Racers at that time. And that was on Easter Eve night. And that game went to 12:20 a.m. Easter Sunday.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
And fluke goal, scores on a deflection. A guy fires a shot from the point, way off net, hits a defenseman in front and bounces in.
Yeah, just a fluke thing that did it.
And in overtime games, also attrition becomes a real issue. I mean, because when you've played 60 minutes and then you played the 20 more minutes and then you go to a second overtime, which means you're bordering to 100 minutes.
Yeah.
These guys just die on the ice, and you have to short shift all the time. Short shift means 35 or 40-second shifts, up one time, back another, and then get to the bench and get fresh legs out.
That's insane.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But is there ever a scenario where there is a shootout in hockey?
Well, in regular season there is.
Okay.
In the NHL, you play a short overtime regular season, then you go to a shootout. wear and tear factor.
But I thought ties counted in the regular season, no?
No, because you can't have a tie. You either get a shootout, you either get an overtime win or loss, or you get a shootout win or loss.
Okay, fair enough. So thanks for bringing me up to speed.
Hockey 101 for the rookie.
That's what I need.
Okay, one other hockey note here we'll get to.
Okay, number 1, San Jose.
Yeah, the NHL draft lottery was on Wednesday night, and San Jose, which has been miserable, and San Jose, which traded all of its players away in a big fire sale, winds up with the number 1 pick in the draft. First time the Sharks have ever got it. They're going to need a lot more players, but they're going to draft Max Celebrini. He's a center iceman from Boston University. He is really gifted. He is going to San Jose, but it's going to be a long growth process. The Blackhawks, who last year got the number 1 pick, Connor Bedard, get the 2nd pick. They're going to get their choice of a load. There's a huge group of European and Russian defensemen that are probably going to go 2 through 5. Chicago's going to draft 2. The Ducks, who are in the midst of this massive rebuild, they keep getting high picks. They're waiting for them all to arrive. The Ducks are going to draft 3rd. They're going to probably get a very good big defenseman from Europe or from Russia. Columbus, which has no players at all, doesn't even have a coach right now. They're going to draft 4. Montreal, which has been trying to fix their franchise, Montreal is going to draft 5. But Celebrini is the number 1 player, far and above all the other skaters on the draft rankings that I've seen.
That's a great name for a number 1 pick, right? Celebrini. I love the fact that San Jose has a team, because really the A's should have moved to San Jose. Yeah. But good for the Sharks for being number 1. I mean, that would be a kind of a good team to maybe for me to root for, being a former Bay Area guy.
You have to root hard because it's going to be a long road back. They traded all their players. I mean, it's dismal. The unbelievable era of Joe Thornton and some of those other guys, that's gone. And they traded what was left away, and it's going to be a long road back, but that was their game plan to rebuild. So we go from hockey, last topic on the table.
Auto racing with Hacksaw. What do we got here? IndyCar suspensions.
We talked about this last week. What happened in the first race of the IndyCar season? Roger Penske's team was caught cheating. They say it was an accident. They had no knowledge. Roger Penske, who owns the Indianapolis Speedway, owns 4 tracks, has had a legendary success, yesterday decided to take disciplinary action against his own people. And it's probably going to cost his teams. He's got multiple teams in the Indy 500. It's going to cost him the 500. Roger Penske has suspended the team president from Team Penske, suspended the director of operations for Joseph Newgarden's team, suspended the 2 engineers who oversaw all the setup of the electronics and the motors in all those cars, suspended them for the entire month of May. That means they will not be available for Newgarden, former Indy 500 champ, won't have him for the Indy Grand Prix, which is this weekend, won't have him for the Indy 500 on Memorial Day weekend. So Roger Penske has invoked an executive decision that we were wrong for how this happened, and I'm taking each of the key administrative guys above those teams out. So that means Newgarden will run the Indy 500 with a new group of leadership that'll have input into the setup of the car, etc. And what they've indicated, Newgarden did nothing wrong. He just jumped into the cockpit and he won the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. But what they did was, at the end of last season, they go through testing, and they put some electronics into Newgarden's car and into Scott McLaughlin's car, who's the second car in that team. And a third car is driven by Will Power, legendary champion. They put these electronics in off-season testing, and they forgot to take them out. So when they got from the car as it was set up at the end of the season for testing, took it off the trailer to run it in the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, the electronics of the push-to-pass, which you can use during the race 3 times, I think. You can use push-to-pass, which gives you extra horsepower only on straightaways. These guys pressed that button coming off the starting grid, and it gave them more horsepower to start the race, which is illegal. Somebody forgot that the electronics they installed during testing at the end of last season were still installed in the car. Now, I don't know how that's possible. And I don't know how IndyCar, which brings your car up to the grid and does all this inspection, how do they not see it before the race even begins? So IndyCar has not responded as to how could this get through your evaluations. Penske was of the opinion that our people made a mistake. They totally forgot that those electronics in testing were still in the car when the race started. So it's controversial, but boy, Penske, he stood up. We were wrong. It was on us. My teams are going to pay a penalty because of it. Wow.
Yeah. Good for him, standing up, being accountable. So this is like a turbo button, right? You hit the button and you just
extra horsepower.
But it's crazy that they would allow it, on straightaways only and only 3 times a race. I mean, how do you police such a thing? You think it would either the electronics would be in the car or not in the car?
Well, they're in the car, but they check the computers up top. IndyCar does, and they know when you've done push to pass. And when you do it the second time or the third time, and then they dislodge it so you can't use it again.
Oh, so they can master unplug it.
Exactly. But what I don't understand is how does Newgarden's car get through inspection before the Grand Prix in St. Petersburg without anybody realizing these electronics are still in it? I don't understand that.
Well, maybe we're not getting the full story here. Maybe they didn't accidentally leave it in the car. Maybe it was a strategy and it was hidden.
Penske said no. Okay. I mean, Penske's his reputation is pure. And the fact that he did this to his own team, which means then they're knocking him out of the Indy 500 and the Grand Prix of Indy. And they had already been stripped of all their prize money and all their points for winning the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. So they're starting way behind the 8 ball for the rest of the season in terms of trying to win the championship.
Wow, that's something.
So that's where we are. Because we're doing something special and because we did a unique remote and a hookup with Jon Cooper, Ourlads Draft Guide, we're not able to do Fans Forum today. Now, unique explanation. Our podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers, 9 stores in San Diego to serve you, and by the good people at North County Eye Center of Poway and Escondido. We're going to try something next Monday that's really unique. And if it doesn't work, all you people on live stream will be making your debut. You'll be co-hosting the show. I'm going to be in Oregon. John is going to be in Dublin, Ireland. We're going to do our podcast double remote next Monday at 1 p.m. So those of you who like us, watch. Those of you who dislike us, watch. It might blow up in your face and you'll get the chance to do your own podcast here. But we're going to do something really unique and different for at least the next week because he's going to be traveling. I'm going to be traveling. But we hope we'll be able to deliver to you all the data you want on your podcast. You make sure you bring your lucky charm with you, pal.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's going to be fun to do this online experiment. So I'm looking forward to that.
If it works, it'll be great. If it doesn't work, wow, somebody else will be doing this podcast. Exactly. Hey, listen, we hope you have enjoyed what we've tried to bring your way today. We're doing a lot of unique and creative things. We invite you to subscribe to what we're doing so you will be able to get the notifications every time we put something up on a YouTube channel. I invite you to check my website. I write on it every day of the week, LeeHacksawHamilton.com. And we want you to share. Tell everybody what we're doing. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a 5-star. John, safe travels as you go to Dublin, Ireland. Maybe you'll get to host your end from the Guinness Brewery in Dublin rather than being out in left field where you always are. But I'll look forward to seeing where you will land on Monday, where you're going to be in Ireland, where I'm going to be in Oregon, and if we can actually pull this sucker off.
We're going to pull it off.
Have yourself a great sports weekend. Enjoy your trip. Safe travels. We'll see you come Monday.
Same to you, Lee.
And thanks for being with us on our unique podcast today, Hacksaw's Headlines.
Join us again for Hacksaw's Headlines on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And find the audio version on your favorite podcast apps. For more content, go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com.